How's everybody doing? Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Fran. Where are you? There you are. Appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate this even more. This is even better. Thank you. So someone who understands my limitations. Thank you, sir. It is a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to be here too. Pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everybody for being here. We complain quite a bit in the southeast cities about a lack of community engagement and a lack of attention paid to us. Um, when I walked in the room today, I thought, "Wow, we can solve this problem right away." The number of people, the number of great people, the number of engaged people, the number of leaders in this room is staggering. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the California Community Foundation. We had a meeting about 3 months ago, I think. It was at the start of summer. We were talking about the Southeast, and we were talking about, again, sort of long-standing problems relating to a lack of resources and a lack of engagement. And as Efrain said, sometimes you have conversations that lead to something. Sometimes, a lot of the time, you have conversations that don't lead to anything. So when this event was put together, it meant a lot. It meant that folks were listening. Not only California Community Foundation, but the endowment was there. Folks from Weingart were there. So this is a start, and a very, very important start. And to Efrain's point, the brown kids from Bell Gardens and Whittier are in Downey and Sacramento and DC and Wall Street, so everybody better start paying attention to us. But there's also Jewish kids from New York, too, who have been helpful, too. Rafe Sonnenschein is somebody who has been a friend of mine for an incredibly long time. There was a Carl's Jr. at Cal State Fullerton when I was an academic, and I sat down with Rafe and I said, I think of running for office. And I'm not sure if he tried to talk me out of it or not, but he asked me some tough questions about about the lifestyle and whether or not you really want to do this. He was a great friend in academia and a great friend to the district. And I thank you and Pat Brown, the Pat Brown Institute, for putting this together as well. Thanks, Rafe. We should applaud them. So with Rafe here, I'm sort of hearkening back to my time as an academic, and remembering that in academia you always start by stating the problem. You always want to ask, what's the problem? What are we trying to address? What are we trying to get at? What are we trying to, what is the current state of things? And in the southeast cities, we have quite a bit of things to tackle. We have quite a number of problems. First of all, it's important to point out we're in Cristina Garcia's district. Miguel Santiago has some of the southeast cities. Mike Gibson has some of the southeast cities. So not all of the southeast is in my district. But if you take my district as a pretty large snapshot of the southeast, we have a significant number of problems to address. I represent 9 cities in the southeast. Of the 9 cities that I represent, 8 of those cities have poverty rates of 20% or more. 8 of the 9 cities have poverty rates of 20% or more. I remember about two and a half years ago during the discussion over the budget when the governor called each of us in individually and said that he wanted to take adult education and remove it from local school districts and move it into the community colleges. And I asked the governor if he knew how many community colleges are in my district. Do you know how many community colleges are in my district? None. There are 0 community colleges in my district. East Los Angeles Community College has a satellite campus in Southgate, but none are actually based in my district. When we have conversations about court funding, which is really, when we talk about court funding, that's an access to justice issue. If you can't get to a courthouse and you can't have your day in court, you can't be heard, that's about justice. That's about an access to justice issue. How many courtrooms do you think I have in my district? How many courthouses do you think I have in my district? 0. 0. I have none. If you live in my district and you have to go to a courthouse, whether it's jury duty or to even a traffic ticket. You go either to Norwalk, and if you want to go to the same, if you want to get, they have the same day sort of service window. You have to get there around 4 in the morning, or else you won't be able to be seen that day. Or you have to go down to Long Beach to the new courthouse. And who wants to go to a courthouse named after George McMahon? Sorry, wasn't in the speech. I put that in there. Hey, look, I have an office in the Reagan office building. I mean, how bad is that? People are always asking me, "Where's your downtown office?" I'm like, "Oh, it's over there. It's on Spring." Like the Reagan, yeah, that one. So you have to go to either to downtown Long Beach or you go to Norwalk if you live in any of the 9 cities that I represent and you want to have your day in court. A lack of resources all over the place. We have the second largest light rail system in the United States, in Los Angeles. Second biggest. Only Boston has a larger light rail system than Los Angeles does. How many stations? How many light rail stations do you think are in my district? One. We got one. We got one in Linwood, on Long Beach Boulevard. One. The second largest light rail system in the United States. We have one station in my entire district. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And you start thinking about park space. Somebody said earlier they're going to do a drinking game. They're going to do everybody's going to take a shot every time I mention the LA River. We're going to walk out of here really drunk. It's going to be a good morning. I don't know if you're going to learn anything, but it's going to be a damn good morning because I got a lot to say about the LA River and the possibilities of a 51-mile linear park. But if you look at 5 of the cities that I represent, 5 of the cities that I represent are in the top 30 in the United States in terms of density. Yet our park space is virtually non-existent in our district. And to a large extent, this is why I ran for office. Everybody's heard this story before. I was working for an organization called the Mexican American Opportunity Foundation. Yay. Hey, what's up? Folks from home. I was working for MAOF, and I always say that every 10 years, they do a census, and people discover that Latinos exist. Like, whoa, where'd you come from? And so all of these corporations they always do these like Latino initiatives. Oh, there's all these people here, we better give them money. And I would do all of these trips. I do all these fundraising trips to corporate headquarters towns. I go to Chicago and talk to the folks at McDonald's and State Farm, and go to Minneapolis. I talk to the folks at Target and Best Buy. And I would talk to them about bringing services, using their philanthropy dollars to bring services to the Southeast. And they'd always say the same thing. They'd say, we want to serve the Latino community. Yes, we're going to do something in East LA. Always say that. Always. All the time. Over and over again. I love East LA. East LA is great. Felipe just bought a house over there, right? Where's Felipe? Love East LA. Love Boyle Heights. Fantastic place. We did a study. We did a survey at the Mexican American Opportunity Foundation at the time. This is like 1997, I think. There were something like 132 nonprofit organizations that had services in Boyle Heights. There were three that were providing services in the Southeast. And this is part of why I ran for office. This is part of what's inspired me to run for office, that this area that has a population larger than many states did not have the sources, the resources, the institutions that we need for these folks. So those are the problems. And then we start to think about the solutions and how to address these problems. And I was thinking about it this morning when I was going for a run in the industrial parts of our district because we don't have the parks that we need. And I always like to use sort of comparative analyses. When I was in, I'm not a real political scientist like Rafe Sonnenschein. I did political theory, so I have less, I can do whatever I want. I can think about anything, right? And my dissertation was on the relationship between aesthetic theory and political theory. So I'm always thinking about like how would an artist help to solve this problem, and what kind of other ideas and modes of thought can we use other than political, other than politics. Let me interrupt myself by telling a really brief story because that's all I do. When I first went to Sacramento, they give me this stack of books. It's like 10 books on California politics, all written by politicos, all written by, Willie Brown wrote a book, and a story, a biography of Jess Unruh and all these folks. And they're not that interesting. I mean, it's mostly like biographers telling stories about how great these people are, and they're not all that critical and engaging and all that stuff. And so the great thing about being a member of the legislature is we go back and forth to Sacramento twice a week, so you get all these airline miles, right? It's fantastic. So we flew. I'm like, hey, where do you want to go on vacation, Andy? So we went to Miami, and I had been reading nothing but books about California politics and California politicians. And then we rented a car and we drove to Key West, Florida, right, which is where Ernest Hemingway lived for a long time. And like when you've been trying to eat healthy for a long time, and then all of a sudden you see like a bag of Oreos, and then you eat not only the Oreos, but you eat the packaging and everything because you're just like, starving. So I'd been reading all these books about California politics, and then I'm in like Ernest Hemingway's hometown, and I bought a bunch of books for my staff as gifts, and I never gave them to my staff because I read them myself, because I had been deprived of reading really good stuff. So I just read all these Hemingway books, and I just stopped reading about California politics for a long time, and I've learned a lot about how to solve, I think, political problems, whether it was the water bond, which I used a lot of stuff from aesthetic theory that I had learned throughout the years, whether it was the 5 gun bills that we passed. I learned a lot about how to sort of package that issue, not from a political standpoint or anything that a politician had done, but from some books I had read about the Mexican Mural movement in the 1920s. And I think sort of like using those different ideas, those different modes of thought is always really helpful. It's because those sort of interesting ways of looking at problems and those interesting ways of problem solving is really the only way that we're going to get to the root of the solution, because quite honestly, politicians have been trying to solve this problem for a really long time and we haven't had any success at all. So having folks from the business community, from the arts community, and from all sorts of different walks of life in here talking about these problems is really interesting. And this morning I was going for a run and I was thinking about Ireland, right? When I was a kid, all the images that we have now of the Middle East, of things exploding every day on the news, when I was a kid, that was Ireland, right? You turn on the TV and every day there was some sort of activity in Ireland. There was a shooting, a bombing, and I started thinking about change and how people change. And I remember there's 2 incidences that I remember really well about when Ireland began to change. I have this like obsession with Irish history, and there were 2 things that really changed in Ireland. One was one I learned from an academic, and the other one I learned from a cab driver. Usually learn more from cab drivers, but I'll start with the academic. No offense. Academics are good too. One academic said that in Ireland there was a big push from outsiders, mostly from Irish Americans, who were saying, like, we're tired of our relatives being killed back at home. We're tired of our homeland being destroyed, being bombed. You American politicians need to do something. You need to go get engaged. And it was President Clinton, the first President Clinton. The one who was pretty good, but not nearly as qualified as Clinton number 2. And it was President Clinton who was pushed to Ireland to the Clinton Accord, the Belfast Accord was something that Clinton helped to create. It was President Clinton who went at the urging of Irish Americans, at the urging of outsiders, to say, go help and alleviate that problem. But it was also a tremendous amount of internal pressure as well. I met a cab driver in Belfast about 6 years ago, and he was talking about what they call the Troubles in Ireland. And I said, what happened? Why did it finally end? And he said, we got busy making money. He said, when you're making money, you don't have time to be killing people. And in the Southeast, we've seen a tremendous amount of lack of economic development. And we know we have these incredible resources, these remarkable resources. The economic engine for Southern California is the ports Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. It's right there in our backyard. And we often think of it, and it has been, as something that's detrimental from the standpoint of traffic. We think of it as something that's detrimental from the standpoint of smog. But we also know the jobs that it creates and the power that it provides us and what it can do for us. We think of the same thing with respect to our transportation corridors. We think of them as smog generators, and they have been. We think of them as traffic generators, and they have been. But they also have the potential, the incredible potential, to provide us with these incredible economic engines. Get your shot glasses ready. We have this 51-mile concrete channel. We have this 51-mile concrete channel that sometimes looks pretty damn ugly and sometimes looks like sort of a hindrance between communities. It sometimes separates us from one another, but really has the opportunity to bind us together and to be a 51-mile linear park. We have that resource in our community. But most of all, we have demographically, if you look at the statistics, my assembly district is the youngest assembly district in the state. Demographically, it's the youngest assembly district in the state. We have the great potential to have this generation grow up with not knowing, respecting, but not necessarily, experiencing the Southeast the way that we did, and having an opportunity to regenerate the Southeast and to make it something new. So when I was running this morning, I thought that maybe the Southeast is much like Ireland. Maybe it'll take a significant amount of outside pressure from partners like Pat Brown Institute, partners like the California Community Foundation, partners like so many of our corporate partners and community and our foundation partners who have gotten the message, who have understood that there is a significant amount of human capital here that really wants to be engaged and really wants to participate actively in the American dream. But none of this can be accomplished from the outside, and we don't want it to be either. We want this to be our own. We want this to be homegrown and organic. I almost said generic. That's odd. We want it to be organic, not generic. So when we think about our homegrown leaders, Oscar Magana from Maywood, I see my buddy Elise Soleil out here, so many homegrown leaders right here in the Southeast wanting to make sure that we take control of our community and that we transform our community in the way that we want it to be transformed, in the way that we want it to look. That's what today is about. That's what the rebirth, that's what the renaissance of the Southeast is about. And I'm excited about participating in that. I'm an actor. I'm an actor in this whole ensemble. I'm a part of that. And we all know, whether it's the foundation, whether it's Pat Brown, whether it's the great council members who we see here, we know that we can't do this alone, that we need all of the human capital in this room and beyond. So for me, that's what today is about. And that's why I'm so incredibly excited. And that's why I thank you for being here. Thanks.